You're telling me your daughter's spine gives you the right to violate community codes? That was the first thing out of Janice Holloway's mouth that morning. HOA board president, all starch and lipstick, standing at the bottom of my porch with a clipboard, a folded citation, and that same brittle little smirk she saves for people she thinks can't fight back. No good morning, no how's your kid doing? Just that flat accusation like I'd personally offended her by letting my daughter roll out in the sun. She planted herself right at the edge of the garden path ramp, the one I poured myself every scoop of concrete laid for Emily, my girl who's needed that incline since the accident, since the day a drunk driver tried to erase our family. It's not personal, Janice said, flicking her pen toward the curve of the walkway, but it doesn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. I have to treat everyone the same. I stepped down from the porch, looked her square in the eye, told her if she wants to treat me like everyone, maybe start by treating me like someone who wrote half the state's child protection policy. She actually blinked at that as if for a split second she remembered she was talking to a grown adult, not one of her minions. Didn't last long. Janice broke my disabled daughter's spine and still had the gall to threaten eviction. You want to talk about nerve? That's a whole new level. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You're bluffing, she said after I reminded her she was standing on a public easement, not HOA turf. That access path wasn't approved. You never submitted a modification request. I didn't have to, and I told her so. The ramp sat right where her rules end and public law begins. Never even raised my voice. I didn't have to. My name carries a little weight in certain circles, just not the kind she's used to. I'm David Rohr, Assistant Commissioner for the State Department of Child Protection and Welfare. My job is investigating abuse, noncompliance, the ugly underbelly of places that like to pretend problems don't exist. I know what a noncompliant HOA looks like from the inside out, and I know how to write a report that lands with a thud in court. But none of that mattered not compared to Emily. 3 months in spinal rehab, 14 years old, a steel rod where her vertebrae used to be. That ramp. It was her first taste of freedom. The only thing that let her leave the porch, roll out to the bench, and sketch the world she couldn't quite touch anymore. Janice slapped the citation to my chest. 7 days, she said, before daily fines start piling up. I caught Emily's reflection in the window, just watching, didn't need to hear Janice's words to understand what was happening. The way Janice jabbed at that ramp like it was some sort of infection in her perfect neighborhood. That night, I didn't sleep. I went through the bylaws, pulled up ADA precedent, called lawyers, started a file. Because this was never about rules. It was about erasing difference, erasing my daughter. I filed an ADA complaint with HUD, started documenting every word, every second of security cam footage, every time Janice looked at Emily like she was something that needed fixing. The twist, Janice never realized who was watching, or that I had no intention of leaving things to board meetings and polite appeals. The next morning, the violation notice was taped to the ramp again, this time, final warning. Board vote scheduled scrawled across the bottom in red pen. She wanted an audience. HOA meetings in Willow Bend Trails are like theater, and Janice always plays the lead. When I walked into the clubhouse, she already had my address up on the projector, non-compliant structures. She delivered her little speech. Hardship doesn't exempt you from rules. Exceptions lead to chaos. Next thing you know, we've got blue fences and backyard pools. People nodded because it was easier than fighting. But when she called my name, I stood up, didn't yell, didn't get fancy, just told them the ramp complies with federal law, and the only thing I'm asking is that they not discriminate. I reminded them there are veterans here, aging homeowners, parents with strollers. The ADA applies whether Janice likes it or not. Suddenly the room felt different. A couple board members glanced at each other. One, Omar Feldman, stocky, gray-haired, didn't look at me, but I caught his hand trembling on his folder. He was the only one who hadn't printed a copy of my violation. Meeting ended in silence. Omar lingered. On his way out, he muttered, "She shouldn't have said that about your daughter. I told her to drop it. I told him people like Janice don't stop until they're forced." He gave me a look, the kind of look you give when you're trying to balance right and safe. Be careful what you put in writing, he said. They'll twist it. That was the first crack in the dam. That night, new notes showed up in my mailbox. Anonymous on HOA letterhead. You're making it worse. She'll find a way to get you out. Leave while you can. Emily asked if people were mad about the ramp. I lied, told her it was just paperwork. She rolled to the window and watched the shells along the incline catch the porch light like she wanted to guard it herself. Later that week, I caught Janice on tape laughing with another board member about teaching lessons, targeting homeowners who push back. It wasn't governance, it was intimidation. I started building a case. Dates, emails, chain of custody, every scrap of evidence. Janice had no idea she'd crossed a legal line she couldn't backpedal over, and I had no intention of warning her. Omar showed up at my door early the next day. He looked exhausted. He told me Janice was escalating, calling a private board vote, threatening to file a child services complaint, hinting my daughter's injury was proof I couldn't supervise. I asked him why. He told me I joined the board to help my neighbors not watch someone weaponize the rules against a kid. His son, he said, rides by our ramp all the time, thinks it's the only cool thing in the neighborhood. Omar handed me an envelope, the board agenda, my name listed under code enforcement extension motion for outside legal action. I gave it back. Keep this if she asks, say you dropped it in the wrong mailbox. He just shook his head. I can't watch her do this again. Then he told me 2 years ago Janice fined a woman for a handrail. Her husband had Parkinson's. They moved out. Janice called it unfortunate. Omar called it cruelty. She smiled and told me I wasn't paid to feel, he said. There's the line. I told him, you need to protect yourself. Keep your own records. He nodded. You're gonna fight her, aren't you? I already was. By the end of the week, the threats turned official. Certified letter, $250 a day in fines. Janice's signature big and smug at the bottom. I filed it with everything else. But when I looked out the window at Emily sketching in the garden, it didn't feel like evidence anymore. It felt like bait. At the next community inspection, Janice led the board like a drill sergeant, pausing in front of my ramp. It's been a problem since installation. Someone piped up, isn't that for his daughter? Janice's smile never wavered. The HOA isn't anti-accommodation, but if every house starts looking like a hospital, our resale values drop. I stepped forward. You should be careful how you phrase that, you're bordering on discriminatory language. She scoffed. You think your badge makes you immune? No, I said, but it protects people from abuse of power, even here. Omar didn't intervene, but his silence said enough. That night, a new notice, unapproved surveillance equipment. She was targeting my doorbell cam now, trying to frame me for violating privacy to pivot the fight to community safety. Tactical but not smart. I found the ADA clause buried in the bylaws, printed it out, highlighted it, added it to the file. The trap was closing. Emily came home, saw the new notice. Does she hate the ramp or hate me, she asked. She hates anything she can't control, I said. She traced one of the shells and said, every time I roll down this, I feel like Mom's still here. That just, yeah, then it stays, I promised. I sent a formal response. ADA Title II, Fair Housing Act, State Accessibility Laws, photos, video timestamps. Sent it to the board, HUD Civil Rights Division, my attorney. The next morning, HUD replied, ADA discrimination report received. They wanted more evidence, witness statements. Same day, Janice sent a cease and desist, accused me of harassment, defamation, illegal recordings. But the law firm on the letter was just her own LLC, the one she uses for her home staging business. I documented everything. That's the move that gets federal attention, not just local. Emily's stress got worse legs, spasming, more pain. I found her at the ramp at midnight, sketchbook in her lap. She drew the house, but in her version it was wrapped in vines, birds in the gutters, the ramp stretching to the stars. She drew herself wheeling down, smiling. I visited the county assessor, pulled original plans, Found at a 4.3-foot pedestrian easement running exactly where the ramp connects to the public trail. Not just my land public right-of-way, the HOA had no authority. I took the documents to a legal threshold attorney. He grinned. They're bluffing. If HUD sees this, it's game over. He explained HUD could issue a corrective order, maybe even investigate Janice's whole history. So I built the case. Binder 3 inches thick, everything scanned, encrypted, backed up. I scheduled an email. If I didn't cancel it by month's end, it would automatically send to HUD's investigator. By then, the local news had the story. Headline, HOA faces federal investigation after blocking disabled teens' access ramp. Janice tried a mass email, all passive voice, all legalese threatening legal consequences for misrepresenting HOA actions. I printed it, filed it under retaliation. Omar started texting. Meeting Monday, closed door. She's nervous. I told him to keep backups. Got copies in my garage just in case he replied. For the first time, Omar wasn't silent anymore. Monday, the birds didn't even bother with the clubhouse. Janice scheduled a closed meeting hoping to muscle through a legal spin for her defense. Omar handed me a napkin in the parking lot. She's requesting funds. She wanted to use HOA money for her private attorney to counter HUD's inquiry, but federal oversight can't be sidestepped. I filed a complaint with the HOA's insurer, Northbrook Mutual, documented risk of discrimination. Filed a request for board financials. Prepped a press kit. Waited. Omar texted again. She didn't get the vote. 3 abstained. I said no loudly. That afternoon, a state investigator showed up. Janice's last trick, a false child welfare report against me. I welcomed the investigator and handed over the whole binder. Turns out I train half the ADA field agents in the department. There won't be a case file, she told me. I just nodded. Sometimes you need the visit, just so the neighborhood knows what game is really being played. And then it happened, official notice, HUD, and the Office of Civil Rights Public Review hearing scheduled. Neighbors whispered, watched, waited. The suspicion wasn't on me anymore. It was all on Janice. At the hearing, Janice tried to explain, but the panel had the internal emails, the recordings, the proof she knew about the easement, the ramp's purpose. When my turn came, I didn't need notes. I told them the truth. 6 citations, fines, false complaints, and retaliation against a disabled child. Omar stood up, moved to hold an emergency board vote, as was his right as VP. The crowd backed him. Within a week, Janice was out 87% voting to remove her. Omar became interim president. First thing he did was void every accessibility citation, then push a permanent ADA amendment into the bylaws. The path got a new sign Emily's way. That afternoon, Emily and I walked it together. Her arms are stronger now, turns more confident, shells still glinting in the concrete. Wildflowers at the base, someone planted them quietly. She pointed at the new sign, asked, "Does this mean I get to boss people around now?" "Only if they mess with your drawings," I told her. So here's the thing. If you've ever stood your ground against a bully in a boardroom, or just watched somebody try to erase something essential from your family, know this. You are not alone. Change isn't loud. It's patient, persistent, documented, undeniable. If you want more stories like this, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments, what would you fight for if it meant everything? Where do you stand on justice, on fairness, on drawing your own path? I want to hear your story.